All right, thanks everyone for being here. Just to make sure you're in the right place, you are at the Innovative and Inclusive Recruitment Panel. We have a great lineup for you today. We're really excited. And we will have folks joining the call on and off. We are recording and also publishing live to Facebook on the Onward Eugene page. So that will be there for later. So welcome to our panel. This is a joint event between Onward Eugene and the Eugene Chamber's Endeavor Eugene program. I'm Cassie Stoner, and I am so lucky to represent both Onward Eugene and the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. Both organizations really invest in and make our equity, inclusion, diversity work part of our mission and part of our community values. So in partnership with Kaiser Permanente, we endeavor to assist businesses in creating more inclusive and diverse workplaces, using our resources to assist Black, Indigenous, and other people of color businesses and community leaders, community members, to help them succeed and celebrate the diverse individuals and ideas right here in our region. So thank you for being here today again and investing in our community. We're excited to share these ideas and best practices and talk to some of our local experts. I am going to turn it over to my collaborator, Nicole Desch with Onward Eugene.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I am Nicole Desch, Onward Eugene's Business Support Manager. Onward is focused on inclusive prosperity, and conversations like today's are key to growing our economy. We help to provide businesses with leadership training through our RISE program, encourage entrepreneurship and innovation through the Huge Launchpad and Small Business Accelerator programs, support local businesses and help them grow, and we market this community to businesses who are a strategic fit for the region. We are a Get Stuff Done organization. I'd like to thank our key sponsors today, Kaiser Permanente, Lane Workforce Partnership, and Comcast for making our event possible and for providing it as a free webinar for everyone to access. I'll turn it back to you, Cassie.
All right, thanks, Nicole. So just a reminder, this is the Innovative and Inclusive Recruitment Panel. So thanks everyone for being here. Just want to reiterate that, really the why behind why we're here today. So diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace has really proven a variety of positive results in bringing different perspectives, increased creativity, innovation, faster problem solving, decision making, higher employee engagement, retention, better company reputation and results. So we're excited to share some of those best practices and ideas and talk with our local experts to share with us. So a couple of rules of engagement before we start. We are recording this session. It will be published to Facebook on Onward Eugene. If you aren't speaking, we ask that you go ahead and mute yourself. We'd love for you to engage with us in the chat. If you do have questions and answers, we'll have them kind of near the end. So feel free to post them in there or save them till the end. And if we aren't able to answer all your questions, or maybe you can stump us with something exciting, we'd be happy to follow up later. So thank you to all of our speakers for being here. And I'm going to pass it back to Nicole.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassie. Now, without any further ado, the reason we're all here, it's my pleasure to welcome our moderator, Ashley Espinosa, Sector Strategy Director at Lane Workforce Partnership. Take it away, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Cassie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be with you. I am excited to be able to moderate this panel. We have 7 panelists, so I'm not going to take too long because it's a really, you will probably stump us because diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big, complex subject. And so it's okay to stump us, and that's probably a good thing so that we can all be growing and learning and continue that. So yeah, as Nicole mentioned, I'm the Sector Strategy Director at Lane Workforce Partnership. It's the workforce board of Lane County. There's 9 workforce boards across the state. We cover Lane County, but for all of you that are in Lane County, you know that we serve the Cascades to the coast. So in that, we have a lot of diversity just within our county, and it is a honor and pleasure to do that work here. Our mission at Lean Workforce Partnership is to meet the workforce needs of employers and individuals through partnerships and innovation. So in the title here, and then the vision really is to just have a trained workforce and individuals that have the knowledge and the opportunity to have career success. So again, this is all very much aligned, and we're very excited again to have this conversation and hopefully fill your tool belt with some tools and strategies to be able to recruit and retain all of that wonderful talent that's out there in our community. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have each panelist introduce themselves, if that works okay with all of you, and just a short bio or introduction of who you are, what you and where you work, please. So first here on my list is Neil, and then from there it's Jennifer Adams. Is it just me?
Can't hear you.
No, Neil, we can't hear you.
And we just had it. Maybe we can move on to the next
Sure.
and we'll try back in a second.
Okay, Jennifer Adams, and then from there it's Dan. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Jennifer Adams. I'm the Director of People and Development at Northwest Community Credit Union. I call it a fancy term for human resources, but I have been in a human resources function for over 15 years now in all different functions. Most of my career was in the manufacturing industry, and this is my first time in financial services and absolutely loving it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dan?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Ertel. I've been in technology my entire career, about 30 years here in Eugene. If you're familiar with Eugene, you may have heard of a company called Info Group Northwest. IGNW is the initials of Info Group Northwest, and we do complex digital solutions. And relevant to this, we do technical resourcing and help folks find their perfect opportunity.
Thank you, Dan. I have Anthony, and then from there, Jennifer Carrion, please.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Buenas tardes. My name is Anthony Velis. I'm with Story Jobs, stands for Search Talent Opportunity Recruitment Inclusion. We are a diversity recruitment dashboard here located in Oregon. And I'm located in the heart of the Latino community in Woodburn, Oregon. And thank you for being here. I appreciate the invite. Thank you, Ashley.
Jen?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see your faces. My name is Jennifer Carrion. I am a bilingual on-the-job training specialist located at WorkSource Lane here in Eugene, Oregon. And I've been in workforce for about 14 years. So I've gotten to see a lot of interesting job trends happening throughout those years. And we essentially, our program helps mid-size to smaller employers offset some of their training costs. So what I mostly enjoy about my job is really watching people fulfill their potential when they weren't always qualified for the work that they really wanted to do. So that's been a joy. Thank you.
Jenna, and then we'll go with Joanna, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Jenna Ely. I work for Connected Lane County as an employment transition facilitator within our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA. So my main job is to work with young people who are facing significant barriers, including being unhoused, involved in juvenile justice, foster care, or having a disability, and helping them navigate and have access to education and employment and support resources. So I'm happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanna Seasonwine. I am the Associate Director for Employer Engagement at the University of Oregon Career Center. So I lead the team that connects with employers who want to recruit our over 22,000 students for jobs and internships. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Neil, should we give it a shot?
Yeah, can we hear me now? Great. My name is Neil Langlois. I'm a CPA here locally in Eugene, Oregon at Jones and Roth. I primarily work with my clients. My practice area is primarily in advising on tax and business issues. Virtual learning mic issues as well when it suits them. So I'm excited to be here today.
Neil, you were first to introduce yourself, and since you introduced yourself last, you're actually first to answer my first question. So don't mute yourself yet. So let's get into the conversation because we don't have a lot of time, but I think it really is important to start with you because what a lot of people are wondering, and I heard today, I think we're 2% away of being at 70% vaccinated, and people are getting back to work, and so. Could you tell us, as a CPA at Jones and Roth, you have an understanding about incentives and what people should be looking forward to in hiring people that were on unemployment and just looking for career opportunities. So could you speak to that for us, please, of what incentives are there out there for hiring employees?
Yeah, and I think you're getting at the work opportunity tax credit. We call it a WOTC credit, but it's actually been around now for quite a while. And historically, a lot of business owners pass on kind of pursuing it as an option. Small organizations that may only hire one person a year, it's generally maybe not worth the effort to go through and kind of get that process set up. But for mid-sized to large-sized businesses that are hiring quite a few folks, that may be coming from, backgrounds, say they're coming freshly off unemployment. There's a lot of categories that apply to veterans, families that find themselves utilizing some of our social services like SNAP. There are quite a few qualifications that make the wages you pay this group eligible for a tax credit that the business owner is able to utilize on their entity's tax returns. It's definitely something you need to get ahead of. It's not the type of thing that your CPA takes care of at the end of the year, although there is a reconciliation process. But a big piece of it is filing Form 8850, and it has to be done within. It's about 30 days from when you hire somebody. So you really have to kind of be aware of the credit and work that into your hiring process. Do not use it as a discriminatory hiring practice, i.e., you kind of want to do it after you hire them, and it's voluntary for them to participate and sort of disclose if they fall under any of those areas. You send that off and you get basically a certification back, and that's some of the complexity. But the credit is worth up to 25% to 50% of that employee's wages in year 1 and year 2 of employment. And there's a whole bunch of weird caveats and limits, but that could be a real boost to shuttered businesses coming back to work. A lot of us were out on unemployment, so there's probably a higher census, if you will, of folks that are going to qualify for this credit. And so kind of getting ahead of that and talking to your advisors and making sure you're incorporating what you need to early on so you don't miss out on that credit. And if I said anything, and maybe you can direct me back to clarify something, I just start talking.
Sure. No, and is that the same as the employee retention credit? So that's separate? Could you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
and so there was a lot of noise out there, right? And there was PPP loans, and business owners aren't sure what they're supposed to do next. The employee retention credit is a credit that was created in the form of a payroll tax credit for basically continuing to pay your employees through the pandemic. And that's actually sunsetting here at the end of this month. However, you can go back and file for this credit all the way back to January 1 of 2020. So there's 6 quarters there. There's a lot of money, up to 50% of eligible wages with some limits. In 2020, it was limited to about $5,000 in tax credits you could receive per employee. And then going into these first 2 quarters of 2021, it was limited to $10,000, I believe, of employee eligible wages for each quarter. So there's a lot of money there. It is all about the details, and it's kind of a if then. You got to go through with your advisor and see if you qualify. But it's not as cumbersome actually as the WOTC credit, and a lot of people qualify. Restaurants, anybody that was subject to kind of a forced shutdown for some quarters and employs less than 100 people should look at this thing yesterday. And then if you're over 100 employees, it's a little harder to kind of bifurcate which employees would qualify and whatnot, but a lot of opportunity there. And it's a direct offset to your payroll tax, which is great for cash flow management.
Nice. Anything else that, we have small business owners on here and mid-size, I mean, I actually don't really know who all is on the call, but do you have any other, tips or things that people should be thinking about, knowing that is going about to sunset? So anything else?
Not so much in the way of hiring folks. Definitely kind of re-asking some of the same questions you may have asked a year ago in March and April when this first set out. Advisors are extremely slammed and busy. We have the same constraints that our community members have with hiring folks and keeping people engaged and all that. And so the rules have changed a lot for us in the last year. So if you got an answer early on and maybe it wasn't as favorable as you'd hope, I would implore you to reach out again. There was a second round of PPP loan that you didn't take a PPP loan in the first one, you can use the second one, even though all the language that came out about it was you had to have a reduction in revenue. So there's just a lot of tweaks that came out. It was quite the roller coaster in terms of the guidance we received and then what we were sharing. And so, and if you talk to your 3 friends at different times, they're going to tell you different things. It's generally, we find people aren't really straight on some of these programs that came out.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, we're going to move on to the next panelist, Neil, but I bet you people will have questions for you in our Q&A portion. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. So Jennifer Adams, you are next. And this has been something that I've, the minute I met you and I've heard what your title was, it was really exciting for me. So you mentioned it a bit in your introduction. So Director of People and Development. What does that mean? And so I want to, I know that, the job description has what it means, but you as a person, as you stepped into this role, as we're going through, I saw in the chat, the roller coasters and all of the things that we've all had to deal with. What does Director of People and Development mean to you? And what are those responsibilities that you've taken on?
Yeah. So I think we've probably either all personally or known someone that has had an encounter with human resources, and it might not have been the most positive encounter. And unfortunately, over the years, that has built up. And so at times you'll come into an organization, I'm not saying this is the case with the credit union, but you'll come into an organization and find that human resources doesn't have the best reputation. So whenever I enter an organization, I'm looking for ways to make human resources better described in what we actually do. Yes, we work with humans. Yes, humans are resources. I don't like that. Along with when I hear human capital, I just kind of cringe a little bit. It's like, that doesn't really feel like you're working with a true human. So that's why I really like the people and development title, because it's about the people and making sure that we're getting them the development they need, the training, the transitioning into new roles so that they're successful in their best way possible. So that could be finding a new role within an organization. It could be finding a new role outside of the organization. I remember telling one of my managers earlier on in my career saying, I want these people so well trained, other employers want them, but they like us so much they want to stay. And then we get to utilize those skill sets for the good of our organization. So that's really what it means to me, is making sure that we're being strategic in how we develop our employees, so we're successful both as an organization and employees are successful in growing their careers.
Well, can we clone you? Like, what, are you there with technology yet? I'm curious. No? Okay.
There are days I wish that could happen.
Well, I love it. I love it. So could you tell us a little bit, like, what's the process in preparing for recruitment and hiring talent? What does that look like? And how often are you finding yourselves hiring right now?
So we are hiring quite a bit. We always have positions open at the credit union. So we're on average, we're probably filling 10 to 15 recs all the time. Like probably many people are seeing, we've had an enormous influx of requisitions coming in. Some of that has been, I call it the departure tsunami, where there's this pent up demand for people who maybe had intended in 2020 to depart to a new organization, and it just didn't feel stable enough for them to depart. And now they feel more comfortable. They're deciding to move on. We also saw the impact of just lack of childcare and people having to make the hard choice of staying home because that was what was better for their family. And then we usually fill about 80 to 90 positions per year just because of turnover and new roles that we're putting in place for the credit union overall. So typically what that looks like for us is we get a requisition from one of our hiring managers and we start out with really in-depth conversations with them to really understand what their needs are and to understand what that ideal applicant or new hire would look like. So we have our base process, but it's meant to be flexible so we can fit the needs, because even within our organization where we have our Northwest culture, the reality is each team has their own culture also. And so we want to make sure that we're fitting our processes and our conversations to those cultures to meet the needs of the hiring managers. And also to provide more support for those that might be greener in the recruitment process, or those are like, hey, I got this, I just need to touch base every once in a while.
We have a little more time with you because I have one more question, and I think this is so even with like adjusting with remote working, how did that work for you? What did that adjustment look like? I'm going to ask Dan this next too, but I want to hear it from you since we have time.
Yeah, so I would say it was interesting. If you had asked me at the beginning of 2020 and said, hey, at least 70% of your workforce is going to be remote, I would have laughed at you, because we were just not set up, nor was it something that was even on our radar at the credit union. We were always very flexible in helping people. So if they had like a big project on their plate and they were able to work from home successfully, they might take a day or two work at home to get that project done. So we were always open to the idea, but at the level that we've had it at, no, we would have never thought it. So we see the advantage of it. We regularly survey our employees, get feedback from our employees, and we find about 2/3 of our workforce that are able to work from home want to continue to work from home. So we're currently putting plans and strategies in place to support that, because we're seeing higher engagement out of our employees because they're able to manage themselves much better in that environment. I think one of the biggest comments that has always stuck with me in one of our earliest surveys about remote work was an employee who said, I missed a lot of work when I had to come into the office because of mental health days I needed. And now I can take the time I need at home, still support my team and not feel like I'm letting them down, but I don't have to turn on the camera, and I might be in my slippers or my pajamas, but that's what I need to get going for the day. So it's decreasing that overall absence rate for us also, and supporting those people that might need more help because of mental or even physical issues where it's just harder to get into the office. So we see it as a plus across the board.
Love that. I'm telling you, clone you. That's our plan. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next person, but I bet you there's going to be questions later for you, Jennifer. Thank you. Dan, you're up. So my question for you, you're a recruiter. So we've discussed how employers are struggling to find qualified talent, right? So can you speak to the current hiring market and dynamics of job seekers and employers right now? Please give us some clarity.
I would be happy to. So the interesting thing is we were acquired by another company called CDW last year, but what has happened is in the last 11 months, our number of contractors has doubled. We're at about 150, 160 contractors. primarily here in the Northwest, but now nationwide. The challenge is that it, just like it is a seller's market here in Lane County, houses are selling for $100,000 more than they're listed. Candidates are typically considering multiple job offers at or above the salary they requested. What that means is when we're asked to help recruit for a job, we're telling our clients that we're expecting to get feedback in 1 to 2 days. And if we're not, chances are the candidate's going to accept another offer. The challenge is there's lots of people looking for work, but those aren't necessarily the candidates you want to hire. And we become very good over the last 15, 20 years using tools to allow us to find people who have jobs and are only passively looking for another opportunity. So, and very similar to what Jennifer was saying, I filled 81% of more than 110 roles with only 1 or 2 candidates. And the way we do that is by having discussions with the hiring manager to learn about the 3 to 5 soft skills that are going to differentiate great candidates from good ones. So it's a tight candidate marketplace. I know organizations typically would prefer not to pay an outsourced firm like us. But the thing is, we're really good at what we do. There's time value of money. And if we can find and fill a role in 1 to 2 weeks versus 2 months to get a candidate hired, there's value to that. But long and the short of it is, it's finding the right candidates, helping them through the interview process, coaching them, being a career coach such that they're not just a number to us, they're a person and they're trying to grow their career. And when we find these people, we want to keep them employed. Some people like having a contract role every 3 to 6 months. That's fine. But when we have those good people, we want to keep them employed and we work very hard to do that. So they're a valuable resource to us. We pay our contractors health care. We have 401ks for them. We do both contract work and full-time employment for people looking for FTE work. But long and the short of it is we are now sourcing locally and placing candidates nationally. And what Jennifer was saying is completely true. I do not see the standard work on-site model ever coming back. I might expect maybe 25%, and then there's going to be some sort of flex or hybrid model that employers are going to embrace because, to be able to take a break and pet your dog or walk your dog and come back, it's really kind of sneaky in that I feel I'm more productive. I've been working from home now for about 5 years. So COVID was not really a big deal for me. But for some people, it really took some guardrails to make sure that they stay productive. But we have technology just like this to keep those teams connected.
Let's talk about that. And by the way, I love being able to do my laundry between meetings. Like that's the best thing. Like that's the best blessing in the world. Like I'm telling you. But what can we do to help people be successful in the remote environment like that? There's people that maybe feel more comfortable. It fit like a glove for me, but for other folks, maybe not. So what are strategies that you all are doing to help with that transition, either on the employer side or on the worker side?
Well, I think our business is unique in that IT people, we're just wired differently. And because of that, going to remote really wasn't a big transition for most IT people. As a matter of fact, they welcomed it because in most cases, they can be more productive. They don't have meetings. They don't have people saying, hey, I have one quick question for you that lasts 10 minutes, times how many times during the day. And these people, these are naturally productive people anyway. And sometimes having less distractions I would actually say not sometimes, I would say by and large, they have welcomed this. So now when employers are saying, no, we need to have you on site, they're saying, well, there's lots of employers that don't need to have me on site. I think I'll choose one of them.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Mhm.
Well, I have another question for you.
Sure.
So, we're looking for diverse workforce. How are you attracting that? What job boards? What are you doing over there? What are you doing, Dan?
So the other cool thing about IT is it's basically colorblind. So we essentially have two criteria. Can you do the job, and are you a good fit for the organization? Those are essentially our only criteria. And we don't care where you are, what color you are, whether you're able, differently able, it doesn't matter. And our clients are the same way. Can you do the job, and are you a fit for the organization? Those are the only two criteria they're typically looking at. In some cases, you have to be US citizens, in that some of our clients are doing defense work, but that's typically the only stipulation that we're faced with.
I think where maybe it gets difficult, and we'll get into this as with the other panelists, is maybe the retention piece. When we do hire a diverse workforce, maybe people that we aren't used to having on our teams, or work a little bit different, think a little bit different, that the retention piece. Do you have anything to add regarding the retention piece to that, or do you feel,
Well, as I mentioned, we have a contractor care manager, and Cami is really good at her job. So, making sure that these people feel engaged, that they have a voice, not only at the clients, but also on their behalf as one of our contractors. I think those are the two things that help them feel like they're successful, and they know, we can't read their minds. So we tell them, if you've got any issues, you need to let us know.
Mm.
So I would think that those are the two things.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. Anthony. So, we've known each other for a lot of years. Thank you so much for being on the panel today. So with your years on and chairing the State Board of Education with the launch of Story Jobs, which is a diverse recruiting platform based in the Pacific Northwest that promotes diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So we have the perfect guy here today. Will you share with us how you see the filter versus spout? So how are we, keeping people out versus bringing people in? How does that work kind of through the spectrum of public education into the workplace? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, that's a great question. First, I want to thank, again, the program sponsors, Kaiser Permanente, Lane Workforce Partnership, and Comcast Business, because these are very important conversations that we need to be having, not only especially the last 12 months, but even prior to and into the future. But yeah, thank you so much. Again, having served on the State Board of Education for 8 years, kind of gave me a unique perspective on education. I also did serve on the local level in Woodburn on the school board. So, but I think, what I see, again, I think it's obvious, is Oregon's becoming more and more diverse. The younger the population, the more diverse it is. Today, there's 25% of the K-12 population is Latino. And by the year 2030, just within the Latinx community, because that's that's the group I'm from, will be about 800 to 1 million people in Oregon alone. So that's going to be about 25% of the population. So with that and all the other communities of color, we're becoming more and more diverse. With the diversity becomes, there's opportunities and challenges, right? There's always that. And I think what I see when it comes to education, the challenges is, how do we transition from the way our grandparents, parents, and the way they learned, the tools they had to learn with, the geographic location, all of that, now to obviously a technology. Information's at our fingertips with Google. And I think there's this big transition shift. Another big thing I think that's a big challenge is, what do we teach, right? There's always that question, what are we teaching and why, right? And, not everybody's going to go to college. So, we have to have technical career paths. We have to have just a lot of opportunities. But the way the systems are set up, it's hard, right? And then, we're moving a big ship, like any system, the ones that you work in. I'm sure things just can't happen just on the drop of a dime. So there is a lot of challenges, but the opportunity is a global one. And being from Woodburn, being a school board member, we did 3 things in our school district. 1, we started a small schools initiative at the high school. 2, a dual language program in Russian and English. And the third one, which people thought I was crazy for doing, we started an international baccalaureate program. And people that back in like 15 years ago thought, Anthony, you're crazy. How can you expect your community to aspire or reach these IB requirements when they're not even making par? Well, guess what? 15 years later, we're one of the top schools in Oregon and in the nation. And we have students that are graduating from Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Oregon, you name it, they go. So that's the exciting part. You know, diversity matters. Diversity will help us compete in a global economy. It even will help us in a local economy, right? Because as the community gets diverse, especially with the Latino community, if you have a person that walks in only speaks Spanish and no hablas español, you may lose a sale or two or three or four, or as they tell the community around, hey, there's nobody there that speaks Spanish. So I would go here. But on the flip side, if you do have a diverse person in your workforce, that may open up a market that you might not have ever thought existed. I've got many examples of that. One funny example I like to exist, it's more national. My friend, Richard Montañez, was a custodian at PepsiCo. He took defective Cheetos. Guess what we Latinos do? We put chili on it and voila, hot Cheetos were born. That's a multi-billion-dollar company. And if it wasn't for the diversity within their workforce, even though it was at a custodial level, that would have never happened. So I guess that's my answer to the first one.
Well, good. I have more for you that I love it. Thank you. Thank you. And so kind of going to the story, and I just really wanted to, I want folks to hear your perspective from, with all of your years on the Board of Education, and then of course the work that you've done in Wardburn. But, with story jobs a little bit, what are the opportunities and challenges between applicants and those looking for talent and for talent? Like what when we say opportunity and challenges, can you break it down a little bit for us? From your perspective, of course.
I think the big number one thing is it's about trust and relationships, and those are not built. Through my life's journey, people on one side would ask me, people in corporate, all these leadership groups, hey, we're trying to find diverse people. And then I live in a diverse community. I know all kinds of people of color across the state. We're looking for an opportunity, and there was this gap. And I was always wondering, why don't people like run into each other and talk? But as the more and more, if you look at it, and just geographically, the way where we live, how we live, who we surround ourselves with, it makes sense that we would never run into each other. So that's how Story Jobs was born. It's really kind of like, in a funny way, a matchmaking service, but obviously we're talking about, job recruitment. But I do think there needs to be a better understanding of each other, and that's really hard to get over online. You got to be with the people. Again, you have to build relationships. It's all about relationships. Once those relationships are built, then the word of mouth just will explode. So I think, the opportunities there are that, just for like HR recruiters is you got to look at your job descriptions. Are they as open as possible, right? One thing about people of color, we have not had the same opportunities as the majority culture. So if you put 3, 5, 10 years experience in some leadership role, most likely even I won't even, and maybe some on here wouldn't even be able to apply for that job. That right there, you dismiss a lot of wisdom, education, experience, and transferable skills. Boom, you won't even get to the front door. And I think that happens a lot. I think, again, you got to be intentional with your work and your diversity. It can't just be a one-off thing. It needs to be ingrained in your culture. I also think, internships are kind of a thing. I think branding is really important. Believe it, diversity matters. You can't just do it. You have to actually talk the talk, now walk the walk, right? You can put some pictures up there and whatnot, but I think people of color, we're wise enough. We've been there, done that. We'll know if it's real, right? It'll eventually come out to us. We'll feel it through the interview process. Again, policies were obviously, when on the board, we're just policy driven. I think those are important. I like what Dan said, the blind resumes. And I just really think that we need to not look at a pipeline approach. I like to use a shoreline, because there's many, many ways to recruit diverse people. But a lot of times we get tunnel vision, and this is the way it's always been done. And we think that this other way, or these other recommendations from maybe your employees or staff or other the community-based organizations, we might think, well, that's not how we were trained. That's not what we learned in School of Business or in our training development. But that's like flipping the funnel. That's like thinking outside the box. And I think those could possibly serve great dividends for your companies.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I just want to I want to do a backflip in my chair right now with everything that you said. We have to go to the next panelist because we have a lot of other people, but hopefully we get to answer some questions later on in the panel. Jen Carrion, you are next, sister. So, hi, we've had great conversations over the years. When I met you, I was like, it was so great. And, and what we've talked about is the many different pathways to become self-sufficient and even successful. And I think Anthony, spoke a lot about that right now. And so given your many years and experience with job seekers, encouraging and guiding them and all the great work that you do, can you tell us what you're seeing from your experience and your work? Like, what are you seeing out there? What is coming to your debt? Because you work with employers and you work with job seekers. So what's the dynamic here? What from your perspective, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think this will kind of touch base on what everyone else has said, but there's certainly a demand for work and there's just not enough applicants for that. So that's one component of the equation. The other one is that I have a lot of conversations with local business owners, executives about diversity hiring and what does that mean? And we have to have a really candid conversation, like, why are you wanting to hire diversity? Is it just for the sake of hiring diversity, or is it because you're actually going to listen to the voices and the experiences that come from these individuals? It's life experience, it's really valuable. And then on the job seeker side of it, it's really about quality of life. And I think that's something everyone has spoken to, but there's so many people who have dedicated a lifetime to a lot of employers and they missed out on graduations. They've missed out on games. There's so many things that people have missed out on because they dedicated their life to their work. And what they're realizing now is that it wasn't really important because that's what they need to fulfill themselves. So it's really about, how much can I sacrifice? What income can I sacrifice to work in a culture that supports that supports me as an individual and that listens and appreciates the work that I'm doing. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's people that also will say people just don't want to work. Like they won't show up for interviews. They're lazy. People just are done with working. We just want to be, a country, an island of retirees at, 20. I don't know. So, I mean, is that what you're experiencing? Do you think that's true?
No, not really. I just feel like not everyone can meet the qualifications that employers are looking for, which is why our program has been so successful, is because we can offset some of those training costs and they can take a risk on someone who isn't that perfect candidate right now, which is a blessing in disguise, really. And what I find is a lot of people end up in leadership roles. And the reason they end up in leadership roles is because it's extensive training. They understand what's expected out of them, and they go in there with a goal and a purpose. I don't know what this panel looks like, but I'm certainly, I have fallen victim to being someone who got 2 days worth of training in a job. And I didn't find out that I did something wrong until I did something wrong. And I was mortified, and it wasn't like a healthy way to learn. So this training program really develops a relationship with supervisors, which is lacking in a lot of training programs, the HR team, and they're becoming comfortable and they're becoming confident. And that's been a huge, I guess it's broken a lot of barriers to that employee-employer relationship. And it's been hugely successful for our participants. In addition, I will say a lot of people who are receiving government assistance, and I'm not talking about unemployment insurance, there's this misconception that they're lazy or it's this or it's that. False. A lot of them have 2 jobs and still cannot make ends meet. They run their kids to school, they have 1 job, an aunt, a cousin, a friend has to pick the child up because there's daycare issues, and then they go off to their second job. So if we can break those barriers and understand, I think Anthony said, not everybody's awarded the same opportunity, and we can take away this idea that there's one path to success. If we can just take that away and have the idea that if we support everybody or each other, we can have a successful community, I think that would make a world of difference. But we have to take a step back and understand that we're all living very complicated lives right now. And if we don't support each other, we're going to continue on this path. So yeah.
I love that, supporting each other. I mean, we all are part of this community, regardless of different organizations that we work at or anything. But I mean, I run into people in Albertsons and I'm like, hey, you know, I mean, we're all part of this community together. So it's so true. You know, I mean, we probably have a lot of small business owners on here. What are strategies and tools and resources that you have in your at your, you know, at your jobs that could help people hire and to take that risk and to maybe hire people that they wouldn't normally?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to my program, and that's the on-the-job training program. And we can offset some of those training costs, which is huge, especially for smaller businesses or mid-sized companies. But we work deeply with some employers, especially employers who don't necessarily have a training plan. We work together with them to develop a training plan for these individuals. And it can last up to 16 weeks, and we stay in touch. And what I find is I have one conversation with the employer very candidly, and I have another conversation with the potential, with the new hire also very candidly, and I try and mediate and find a common ground. But I think that's the number one, or like that's the most used muscle that I have, is that OJT program, because it really does help. In addition to that, I think hiring diversity is huge right now. And I have an employer who's constantly asking me like, okay, Jennifer, how do I hire Hispanic people? How do I hire, you know, the BIPOC community? What does that look like? Or better yet, how can I take away the component of hiring people who we feel are like comfortable to our communication styles, right? So this person in particular, this company in particular, does the Myers-Briggs personality assessment. And essentially what they end up doing is looking at their own staff and understanding where people's strengths are, and then hiring maybe somebody who's a bit more communicative based off of that. Because I think people are really recognizing that there's so much profitability in diversity and so much innovation in diversity. I can't remember what report it was, but I think it was like 25% profitability goes up if your executive team is actually diverse, because you have that representation there, you have that connection there to your employer. It helps with retention when you're represented in higher levels. So I would say potentially the Myers-Briggs, it's a smaller cost, so you don't have to invest a bunch of money. You can communicate with people differently. You understand what their motivations are and how they like to be talked to. And then just different hiring practices, really. I would say focus on one metric. Is it that you need females in your workforce? Is it that you need bilingual people in your workforce? Rather than just focusing like diversity as a blanket. It's really important to focus in on that, on those metrics that you have.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And Jennifer Adams put in the chat about the removing of the years of experience and explain what skills are needed. So removing the years of experience, like, open the floodgates for you, Jennifer, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. Rewording your job listings, because as of right now, I think Anthony said it best, not everybody had education or opportunity to go off to college. Or also what I found in my 14 years of experience is we have a lot of immigrants who have so much education from other countries, not just Latin America, but Europe or Asia. And somehow magically, when they cross this line and they come into the United States, all of that is no longer valid. It's null and void, right? And that's a huge disservice to our community, and it's a huge disservice to that individual. So yeah, I mean, there are some requirements. If you're going to operate on me, please have the proper qualifications and education and training. But aside from that, is that something that they can really learn on the job? So I forgot it's a high percentage, but of people, I just drew a blank. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. So it's called the 2-in-1 pool effect. So if you have essentially two diversity candidates in a hiring pool, you're more likely to hire someone who's of diverse background, right? And if you do not, that person will never be hired. So you really have to start looking at different hiring practices. And if your job postings and your job listings don't allow for that diverse BIPOC population to come in and apply, you're never going to see change.
All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to move on a bit. Now we're going to be with Jenna. Jenna, thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed working with you the last few months that we've been getting to know each other. So Connected Lane County, through your programs and partnerships, promote and place students in internships, employment, and pathway opportunities. And so I just wanted to know, when we talk about when we want to work with employers and tell them about youth, they're always kind of like, that's a heavy lift, or like that sounds like a fun thing to do, but that doesn't sound like something I want to do, or what does it all entail? So can you tell us from your experience and in your work, what does that mean? What does it mean when they say it's a heavy lift to start, looking at hiring youth, and especially the youth that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Ashley, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this with youth in particular. And I always think it's a great question to bring back to an employer. So going to them in our meetings and saying, what do you see as the heavy lift? I have a youth who's ready to enter the workforce. They may not be as experienced, but they're ready and they want to learn. And in my role as an employment navigator, my job is really to serve as a connecting piece between a youth and a business. So that coordinating piece, and finding partnerships and providing opportunities for youth to explore in a safe and welcoming environment. And so that's what we're asking out of businesses when we go into them and say, hey, we have a youth who's ready. And the cool part about my job is I get to, not just meet these youth in like 5 minutes and say, we're going to place you here. I get to work with them a lot beforehand, which is a huge blessing on my job, because I get to learn and navigate what their skill sets are. We get to learn maybe if they've never had work experience, or if they've had a ton of work experience, maybe why they can't hold a job, and what things happen with that. But in every single conversation with a business, we talk about what barriers exist for their business in particular. So everything is very centered and focused around who we're working with at that time. Within Connected Lane County, we have 42 different businesses that we are working with, specifically to place youth into work experiences. So that's a ton of different businesses in our community that have said, yes, I'm willing to host a youth, I'm willing to work alongside them, teach them. But in every single conversation with all 42 of those businesses, we have to have that conversation of, what do you consider the heavy lift, and how do we take that burden away from you? And a lot of times the answer is, it's really scary to hire a youth who may be young. They're either fresh out of high school, or they may not have finished high school yet. It's hiring a young person with no experience who maybe also doesn't have those soft skills of communication, time management. They might not always have access to transportation or reliable transportation. And so we get to have a conversation with the business of, this is kind of who this youth is. This is a little bit of their story. They're going to share that with you. And then how do we be flexible, and how do I sit in this kind of middle spot of communicating, collaborating, coordinating, all those different things, so that both sides of the business and the student feel supported throughout the entire process. But, in addition to those soft skills, we've also seen that heavy lift look like a youth not being ready to enter full-time and the workforce wanting somebody full-time. So we talk a lot about flexibility, and what does it look like if you really, really want to hire this young person? How do we change your attitude and change your mindset of who you envision you need to hire? So does that look like we are hiring somebody maybe at 20 hours a week with the anticipation that each week we'll maybe add a few hours, and then eventually the youth will come up to full-time? Does it look like having them come in the afternoons, different times like that? And then we also have a big conversation around, this youth may not be ready, or they may not, we have partnerships with steel manufacturers, which is clearly a lot of safety potential hazards. And so we have a ton of conversations also where people are like, I do not want to let this youth out on the floor. That's a lot of manufacturing, it's a lot of equipment rolling around. And so then we have that conversation of, what does it look like to pair the youth with a mentor? And so their entire work experience, or maybe the first 2/3 of their work experience, they work alongside somebody and they get to be mentored the whole way. They get to learn, okay, when I walk into this facility, these are the things I need to do every day. And I have somebody who, if I have a concern, I can go directly to, who's maybe not my supervisor, because that might feel intimidating, but this person who's my peer who I can go to, ask questions, all that sort of stuff. But again, we always come back to the business and say, what do you perceive in your organization, in your business? What is the heavy lift for you? And how do we break that barrier down? Is that helpful?
That is helpful. And I mean, can you give us some success stories? Like maybe I would love to hear some success stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I work with quite the range of youth. I have youth who are very heavily involved with juvenile justice system. I have youth in foster care, youth who have different abilities. And so some of the success stories, one, I have a youth who has been involved in juvenile justice, and we went out, he's super interested in welding. So we went out to Far West Steel and said, hey, we have a youth who's super interested. They said, great. We got to go there. This is a youth who very rarely holds a job. In the program that he is living in, his supervisor told me he's never held a job for more than one month. And so we kind of went in with that expectation of knowing he would need a little bit more support in different areas. We got to have that conversation with Far West Steel. Before the work experience even started, we took a really in-depth tour, and he was really excited about it. So we kind of planned it with baby steps and then got in, and he was there for 3 months, which is the duration of our work experiences. And about 1 month in, Far West came to us and said, we love having him on our crew. He's amazing. If he would like to, once he graduates high school, we are more than happy to take him on full time. And about 2 months in, he was like, I think I also want to try exploring engineering or electrician work. So, but a cool opportunity is that, you know, that opportunity existed for him to get into this space, test it out, see what it was like, decide, you know, I don't know if I want to do this forever, and that's okay. We always encourage youth, explore while they're young, see what options there are. And that's exactly what he's doing. And so we're able to switch gears and say, Far West, thank you so much for your opportunity and for this engagement, for getting him excited, for having his longest work experience, you know, out of his whole young career so far. And now we're going to try something new and see if there's something else that gets him exciting also. So we have some different fun stories like that. We have a youth who, I saw Megan from PCK comment in here. We have a youth who has been at PCK for the past 12 weeks. And she came from a transition process, and get really excited about working in a kitchen. She didn't have any work experience prior. Positive Community Kitchen is an incredible place for young people to learn, really supportive environment, and we get to transition her. She just finished her work experience there, and we're going to transition her over to Elegant Elephant, so she gets to see a whole new side of what it looks like to work in a kitchen, and get some more experience with maybe like working at the counter and selling things. So lots of really positive opportunities, experiences for young people. It's exciting.
Well, you know, I'm one of your guys' biggest fans. So thank you so much for all of the work that Connected Link County is doing, and send my hellos to Heidi for me, please.
I will. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to the next person just so that we can have time for some questions. And Joanna, you're next. Are you okay?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, I had my, I didn't think it was going to go off. So sorry. So I have a question for you. With the experience, with your experience at the University of Oregon, and knowing that there are more BIPOC and diverse students graduating more than ever before, could you tell us, you know, what are you seeing as, you know, what are college students looking for? Which are the values? Do they, you know, what are they looking for? What are the values that they're wanting to identify with when they're looking at going to work for a company?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So just to give you an overview of what the University of Oregon looks like these days, we have over 22,000 students, of which about 19,000 are undergrad. And when we're looking at our incoming student class, so like the most recent first year student class, about 34% of them identified as being from a historically minoritized race or ethnicity or more than one race, and about 40% said they are first generation college students, and about 12% are international students. So you're right, the university has become much more diverse over the years, and that trend's just going to be continuing, which is fantastic. So when we talk to students and we ask them, what are you looking for in a future employer? One of the things that they tell us, regardless of their background, their race, or their ethnicity, is that they want to see employers who aren't just talking the talk, but walking the walk when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I know Anthony was talking about that earlier. So, at the very least, you have an infrastructure in place to support your diverse employees. It's not just about the recruitment, it's about the retention. What are you doing to keep those candidates after they come on board and are staff members? Do you have infrastructure in place? Do you have employee resource groups if you're a large enough employer to do that? Our students are savvy and they're researching employers' websites to see, do you have a diverse makeup on your leadership, on your board, on your staff? Am I going to see people that look like me? So they're doing their research ahead of time. So it's not enough just to have a diversity statement on your website, although that's of course a great thing to do, but we really want, the students want to know, how are you backing that up? Another thing we hear from students is that they are looking for opportunities for mentorship, for training, for professional development. So are there going to be opportunities for them to learn and to grow in this job? It's not just about coming in and sort of, clocking in, clocking out. They want to know, are you going to invest in their growth? And the third thing I would say is that they're really looking to see, as an employer, are you being transparent, and are you allowing your employees to be authentic in the workplace? Our students are fully embracing who they are over the time of being at university. And so they want to know, can I be fully myself in the workplace? And so what are you doing to encourage your employees to bring their true, full, authentic selves to work? And how are you communicating that to potential candidates for your jobs? And the last thing I would say about that topic is, I know here in Eugene, oftentimes when I see students who are looking for opportunities, they're not really sure if there are opportunities for them to stay here in the greater Eugene area. So I would definitely encourage employers, even if you don't have opportunities to hire early career roles or entry-level roles, are there other ways that you can engage with early career talent, like paid internships? And the payment part is important when you were talking about engaging diverse candidates, because a lot of our students are putting themselves through school. They can't afford to work for nothing. And a lot of times unpaid internships that we see, not only are they not paying, but they're asking or requiring the students to get college credit, which is a financial burden on the students. So we really encourage all of our employers to make internships paid. And if you can't do an internship program, are there other ways you can engage early career talent, like a job shadow program or something like that?
I love all of those suggestions. I want to pick your brain a little bit more around, can you tell, around trends and best practices? Sorry, Joanna. Trends and best practices and writing a job description,
Yeah.
or for it to even be understandable.
Yeah.
What are you seeing, and what is your advice for that?
Yeah, and I would sort of broaden that, if I may, just to talk about sort of the whole process of when you are deciding how you're going to look for that candidate. And I think a lot of things I'm going to say are going to echo things that we've already heard from Jennifer Carrion, from Anthony. So hopefully, you're going to be hearing it from a couple of different people, and that will spark something to take a look at how you not only write your job descriptions, but also look for talent. So the first thing I would say is that in your job description, those minimum GPA cutoffs, which we've already heard, can be a huge barrier for students. It's not because they're not smart, as smart as other students, but I'm talking specifically about Black students, Latinx students, Native or Indigenous students, but they just have so many other factors that are going to be impacting their GPA, that we know that historically their GPAs tend to be a little bit lower. It might be that they have jobs that they're working. They might not have had the same opportunities coming into university. They might have family obligations. So having that GPA as sort of a cutoff line, it's going to limit your applicant pool right off the bat. Same with major requirements. A lot of times employers say, well, I'm hiring for a business role, so I only want business majors. But we know from our own experience, so many of us work in business that came from a variety of majors. And so do you really need to be hiring only from a small subset of majors, or can you open that up? It's going to open up your applicant pool. Same thing with the requirements for the application. Do you need all kinds of supplementary materials that students may not have the time to work on, whether it's work portfolios or additional materials? So think about the things that you're requiring and really try to lower the barriers to entry to have students put in their application. The next thing I would say we've heard before is to focus on skills and not experiences. I can't tell you how many jobs we see come across Handshake, which is our job and internship board, that are supposed to be entry-level jobs, and they say 3 years experience. That is not an entry-level job. So that's an experienced hire. So think about the transferable skills that students will bring, and not necessarily from a role that's just like the one that you're hiring for. Like I said before, a lot of our students are working to put themselves through school. So they're working in customer service or in hospitality, which bring great transferable skills to a variety of roles. So think about the skills that are going to help this candidate succeed. Make sure to have a clear description of job responsibilities and expectations so students know what to expect for the job, and really highlight your company's values. Because like I said, students want to know, what does your company stand for? So put that in your job description. I also encourage businesses to check for business language or jargon or lingo. A lot of times I see sort of boilerplate that they're copying from their corporate speak that just doesn't mean anything to a student population. And so think about the voice that you're using in your job description. Similarly, check for gendered language or for terms that might be off-putting, especially to women or historically minoritized groups, like we're looking for a ninja or for a rock star or for a hacker. There have been studies that have been done to show that if you put those kinds of terms in your job description right off the bat, you're going to limit your job applicant pool, because a woman candidate or a Black or Latinx, Indigenous, or other historically minoritized group candidate doesn't feel that that resonates with them. Another thing that I think has been mentioned already, it's really important to disclose the salary. We really encourage employers, although we don't see that happen so often, to disclose the salary. Handshake, which I mentioned before, did a study recently of the data of students that are submitting applications through their platform. And they discovered that when a salary was disclosed, there was an 11% jump in applications from Latinx students and a 13% jump in applications from Black students, just from that one thing alone, putting that salary in there and making it transparent. And I would say that goes for all jobs, not just for entry level or early career jobs. It's a really great practice. And I know a lot of employers are starting to think about how they can do that. And finally, I would say through the recruiting process, can candidates meet and engage with people that look like them or that maybe have some shared experiences? Do you have staff that were first gen that can come and talk to potential candidates, or that have, that are women if you're trying to hire more women candidates? So think about how you can have the candidates engage with your current staff that look like them. And the last thing I would say that goes back to where we started the conversation, there have been studies that have come out recently from Handshake and others about the benefits of both virtual recruiting and remote work to open up opportunities for our students of color and for our early career talent of color. So we learned from Handshake that almost all student groups, with the exception of white males, told them in a survey that they conducted that they preferred virtual interviews because it was less intimidating. It made them feel more comfortable than in-person interviews. So think about how you might be able to engage some virtual recruiting techniques to open up your possibilities with candidates. And similarly, going back to our first earlier conversations about remote work, if you're really interested in diversifying your candidate pool and your staff, you want to look for the best candidates regardless of where they are. And so remote work really does open up those opportunities where you might be able to connect with diverse candidates that maybe aren't going to be able to come into your office every day, but they're going to be able to do a great job.
Such great information. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions in the chat? Because I think we've gotten to the end of my panel here, and I thank you so much, all of you, for giving such great information. Does anybody have any questions? And I don't know how you want to do this. Is it just the chat, or are we letting people just unmute themselves and ask the question? I would be okay with that too. Takers? Really?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Ashley, it's Siobhan. So one thing that I've been thinking about, and this is really to any of the panelists, is so when we're talking about an inclusive workforce and, we're coming off of this pandemic and not everybody feels comfortable coming back into the office, how do you still highlight those individuals who you don't see every day, who are doing, great work from home, but they don't have the opportunity to just kind of pop in your office and, show how they're doing their work to you face to face? Like, how do you still keep the people who are doing work outside of your vision in your forefront, if that makes sense?
Who can take that?
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
my wife's a bank manager.
Jennifer, yeah.
So we're very team focused. We're very on the job training. We do have very technical, highly capable associates show up out of school. However, they don't really know how to do the job until they come in and do it. And we were right at the tail end of our busiest time of the year when COVID first broke out. And we quickly adopted the Microsoft Teams platform. I refer to it as like managing by Facebook. If you've used Facebook, basically all the functions in Facebook, tailored groups, private groups, teams, kind of just general threads. It has all of that available there. And that's what we used to basically make sure we were including everybody. We had health groups, we had everything that we normally had, but we found a home for it on Teams, and then celebrated folks and did contests. And if you don't have something like that going yet, and it's really it's like a translatable skill for folks, youth folks coming out of school that have kind of grown up with Facebook and Instagram. They know how to go into that situation a lot better than cold calling a partner or somebody they haven't worked with yet to get information out of them. It was a lot easier for them to chat. We're working towards building their confidence through the process and getting them comfortable to call us, because to do their job effectively, they got to develop those skills. But Microsoft Teams was just irreplaceable for us to get through the last year and a half.
Yeah. So a theme here, right? Rethinking, reforming, being flexible. I think I heard that over and over again from all of you. Jennifer, do you want to answer? Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, and I would second the Microsoft Teams platform or any other chat platform. It just makes it so much easier when you can't see people eye to eye. We call it seeing each other in 3D now, just for fun, because it's so rare that we get to see that happen. But I think it's also being more intentional in your communications. Before the pandemic, those water cooler or hallway conversations were constantly happening. And so you wouldn't think about the fact that you truly were having daily check-ins with your team members or other team members. And so it's just flipping it from that water cooler to the hallway, to the Teams platform instead. So we went from, hey, how you doing in the morning, to a 15-minute daily check-in with my team on a regular basis. And it's amazing what you'll learn with those conversations. You can see what's happening with someone and you can say, hey, everyone, jump off the call. We're going to continue this conversation here. So there's that piece of it. I would say as you iterate beyond the pandemic, and that's where we're really at as an organization right now, because we basically took what we were doing in office and put it at home. Now we're saying, okay, this is our strategy moving forward. We need to iterate on this and make it even better. So what we're looking at is our strategy of remote first, which means not everyone's going to be remote because we can't. We're a financial institution. It's just not physically possible. But everything we do, regardless of location, is going to be through the lens of remote work. So we might have 5 people in a meeting that are actually at our main headquarters or our support center, but maybe our new practice is they still do Zoom calls instead of coming together in a room, having side conversations while that person that's still on a remote call is going, hi, I wonder what they're talking about because I'm not part of that conversation anymore. So it's going through that lens of remote regardless of where you're sitting. And so that's kind of the next process that we're going through. And we're just at the very beginnings of it, but we see the advantage of how to make sure that we're continuing to be inclusive in our ongoing remote versus more of that hybrid model.
I can just add on to that. That was really great, Jennifer, about inclusion. And one of the things about inclusive design is that, you may be designing for a particular population, but it's going to benefit everybody. So just like we think about how buildings have a ramp outside so that people who can't go up and down stairs can use the ramp, but it's for everybody, right? Not just for people who use mobility devices or wheelchairs, but for a parent pushing a stroller or for someone pulling, a roller bag or things like that. So similarly, for remote work, if you take that remote work for remote first viewpoint, actually it's going to benefit the people that are in the office too, because before you might have had those water cooler chats and then there was no way to capture that after the fact. Now, if you're moving it onto your platform of choice, we also use Microsoft Teams at the university. Now it's captured there for everybody and you can go back, you can search for it. I do that all the time. I can't remember what that thing was that someone sent me and I can look for it. So, thinking about how you can hang on to those techniques and bring them back even once you're in the office, regardless of whether you're fully back in the office or you're split with some people from home or some people in the office. Those are actually techniques that are going to benefit everybody in the long run.
There's a question in there from Ruth, but before we get to that question, I just wanted to piggyback on something else on here because it goes with this question. That are companies providing remote tools for home, like desks, chairs, large monitors, paying for high-speed internet? It's one thing to say that, to be accessible in that way, but then it's another thing to actually how do companies actually make that happen? So can anybody speak to that? Yeah, Dan, please.
Companies are saving thousands of dollars by not renting facilities anymore. And the time that employees used to have to drive to get to the office or, drive to come home, for lunch and then come back to the office. So travel costs have gone down. Unfortunately, because of COVID, lunch meetings, those went down. But the biggest cost is the commercial office space that many of our clients have been able to put back into technology and into their people. And again, as I said earlier, I would be willing to bet that when we go back to on-site, it's going to be 25% of the workforce compared to the way it was before COVID. Employers were not embracing a remote first environment before COVID, but then they had to. And then what they found out is with good employees and good technology, people can work anywhere. All you need is an internet connection. And now after a year and a half, they're saying, well, why should we be spending, thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on commercial space when people are happier working from where they are? So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? I do want to get to Ruth's question though, because it's a good one. Yes, please, Jen.
Oh,
Sorry.
I just wanted to go back a step. A lot of what's being talked about is overall productivity, but there's been endless reports documenting how teamwork and the impact that distance working has impacted team connectivity, right? So what a lot of people are doing is having just like 15 minutes throughout the day at different times. So it's available for different people and having those like water cooler conversations that aren't necessarily work related, but it is about getting to know your teammates. And with hybrid programs coming into place, that's going to be crucial to making sure that you can relate to your coworkers, where it's not necessarily just about work, but it's about getting to know who that individual is and having those personal connections with people.
I want to jump in and say, I think the verdict is still out when it comes to, I'll just specifically say the Latino community. We are a very social, multi-generational group. I'm just thinking for myself, the people that I know here in Woodburn, and I'm not sure if the isolation of working from home is actually very healthy. and overall. So that's, to me, that's my big question mark. How do you measure productivity? I mean, all these things, right? But I do think, that there is, we are human beings, and there is something to say about connecting with community, building relationships, bouncing things off. It's definitely, I'm kind of that kind of person. I mean, I think that's my style. I like to be in a room with people, brainstorm. I'm a creative person. I have another marketing company. And so I find that really, really challenging to do that on a platform, because first you got to know how to use it. And then you got to be cool enough to make it even look cool. So all these things, right? So I just think that verdict, I know, I'll just say what I see as the Latino community is still out. I'm not sure if that's a winning formula at this point for companies.
And yeah, that was what I was going to echo. We asked people to go work from home because we had no option. And, our employees stepped up and they did, very well. But if you don't have a team in your organization, or you haven't really dug deep in what working from home means for your employees and the experiences they're having, I think a lot of employers take for granted that the person's workstation is great. Not that there's 3 kids in the other room, or they don't have fast internet, or there's a neighbor living above them with a loud dog. I think there's a lot being taken for granted. And those same employees that had a hard time sharing their personal lives pre-COVID are right there still. They're coming up to work to do a good job, and sometimes they're holding back in what's limiting them to be productive at home. So if you just see their productivity go down, and that historically wasn't how they behaved, it's probably a deeper conversation than saying, oh, you're failing because you're at home. It's probably not what's happening. There's probably just some tools, things that need to kind of be addressed. And I think, to Anthony's comment, you have people that hated the computer before, and then they're not going to come out and be like, I can't work it. I don't know how. Every time I get on, like you saw me earlier today, I couldn't get my mic to work. It's just, there are some real new problems. We're calling this an economic shift. We're at the beginning, the infant stage of it. Commercial real estate, commute to work. You really I think you need to have your ears open and not draw lines in the sand because you think one way or the other, or you're going to set yourself back. With your employers, our greatest resource, you'll see higher turnover. It's going to be a lag market for you because you're going to have to go replace those people. So, just the more forward communication you can have is going to be, I think, key getting through this. And I through this 2 years, I talk to my clients, all the time, and it's just amazing what some mindsets were a year ago and where they've come, and what they're just like night and day organizations, and how they approach their work and their staff. So I think it's really exciting, but it's really nobody has the answer yet. Not a single.
You're so right, Neil. Thank you so much. And I think that's a good way to kind of close us out. And I'm going to actually hand the last question to you, Nicole, and then you can do the closing because we're about to get out of here. But I mean, if anything to leave, with people that are on this panel and are listening to us today is get informed, be open-minded, work in collaboration. You have so many different opportunities through Onward and the chambers, and so many people that are working really hard to align information to make sense, align resources and information. And so coming to panels like these and partnering and just learning and being open-minded, I think is kind of going to be our ticket as we navigate all of this, because we really don't have the answers. And I think we're just going to continue, if anything, just being flexible and adaptable is really what's going to get us on the other side of all of this. So Nicole, I think that's it for me. Thank you so much to the panelists, and then I will hand it to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone so much for being here today. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you so much to our amazing moderator, Ashley. So appreciate you today. You did a fantastic job. We had a lot of panelists, a lot of information to cover, and so I so appreciate the great job everybody did today. And definitely feel free to follow up with any of us if you have further questions. Onward and the Eugene Chamber of Commerce, we're happy to help with any questions we can answer. Thank you again so much to everybody for being here today.
Well, there was one question, sorry. So Ruth in there did wonder if there was an organization in Eugene, Springfield that's doing this right. And who is the organization, if there's any, that's kind of auditing, these, different success stories, I guess, or practices.
I'm not aware of there being anyone that's doing audits. Cassie, do you know of any?
I don't, but I would open that question to the panelists also. Anyone?
We've looked at the Career Center and haven't found anyone who's auditing Eugene Springfield regional, within the region. There's certainly national organizations that do audits. You have to be careful. Sometimes some of those, it's kind of a pay to play model where the business is sort of paying to be listed as, top 100 diverse companies. The other thing I would say is that diversity and supporting diverse staff looks different at different sized companies. So employee resource groups are something you're going to find at large organizations, but probably not at an organization that's 50 people or less. So it's hard to sort of come up with benchmarks when we'll look at different things. I will say at the Career Center, we've been trying to figure out ways that we can measure employers and developing a scorecard that we can use internally, but I haven't found anybody that's doing that in the region.
And I think like that, we're all, this is a kind of a not new, but we're putting this as now a priority. So I bet you the more conversations, partnerships, and collaboration we're doing, it will be something that we should do and need to do. So thank you, Ruth, for putting that out there and knowing that it would be helpful, and it is helpful to understand who's doing this well. How do we learn from that, replicate it, support those businesses, and then also having somewhat of an audit to be able to understand how do we continue to support as things change and adjust. So thank you. I just wanted to get that last question because I didn't want it to go unanswered. Not that we had a really good answer for you. So thank you so much. And sorry, Nicole, I just had to do that.
No, thank you so much, Ashley. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you all for being here.
Have a good afternoon.